Only legends can hit targets at that distance, General Blackwood muttered to Colonel Hayes, his weathered hands gripping the observation deck railing. The morning sun cast long shadows across the expansive rifle range where 1,700 meters of open ground stretched toward targets that appeared as mere specks against the distant hillside. Below them, Private Kestrel Voss stood the firing line, her slight frame dwarfed by the massive Barrett rifle resting on its bipod. The betting had started before she even touched the weapon. 20 says she doesn't even get close, whispered Sergeant Torres to his companion. 50 says she can't see the target from here, came the immediate response. Laughter rippled through the gathered personnel, a mix of seasoned snipers and combat veterans who had seen recruits come and go like morning mist. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar moments where someone surprised everyone with hidden capabilities. General Blackwood checked his stopwatch with deliberate precision. The previous 3 candidates had failed spectacularly at this distance. Master Sergeant Reynolds, a 20-year veteran with confirmed kills in 3 theaters, had missed by 18 inches. Staff Sergeant Chun, whose reputation preceded him from the Ranger battalions, had come within 12 inches but still failed to achieve the center mass requirement. Even Captain Morrison, fresh from sniper school with distinguished marksman credentials, had struggled to find the target through the morning haze. 1,700 meters separated success from failure, legend from wannabe. At that distance, wind became an enemy more dangerous than any human adversary. Humidity played tricks with bullet trajectory that could turn perfect shots into embarrassing misses. The slightest tremor in hand or heartbeat could send rounds sailing wide by feet rather than inches. You understand the parameters, Private, Colonel Hayes called down to the firing line. 1 shot, center mass, 1,700 meters. The target measures 18 inches by 24 inches. Wind is gusting from the southwest at 12 knots, with variable direction changes every 30 seconds. Kestra nodded without looking up from her scope adjustments. Her movements carried an economy of motion that caught the attention of Master Chief Hendricks, whose sharp eyes had evaluated thousands of shooters over 3 decades of service. Something about her grip, her breathing pattern, the way she settled into the rifle suggested familiarity that contradicted her personnel file. She won't even find the target in that scope, predicted Lieutenant Barnes, leaning against the equipment shed with arms crossed. The morning light creates too much glare at that angle. Even experienced spotters struggle with target acquisition at 1,700 meters under these conditions. The assembled crowd of 43 military personnel represented every branch of service, drawn by curiosity and the entertainment value of watching another recruit fail at an impossible task. Impossible had become the operative word whispered through their ranks. Colonel Hayes had established this distance specifically because it separated the competent from the legendary, the skilled from the mythical. Private Voss adjusted her scope one final time, her finger testing the trigger weight with the practiced touch of someone intimate with precision instruments. The Barrett M82 beneath her hands represented 50 pounds of engineered destruction, capable of sending its projectile across vast distances with devastating accuracy when wielded by masters of the craft. General Blackwood leaned forward, expecting to witness another failure that would reinforce his belief that legends were born from exceptional circumstances rather than trained in basic programs. The 1,700-meter shot belonged to an exclusive club of marksmen whose names appeared in classified after-action reports and whispered conversations among special operations personnel. Wind shifted again, carrying the scent of desert sage and morning dew across the range. 43 pairs of eyes focused on the slight figure behind the massive rifle, waiting for the inevitable miss that would confirm their collective assessment of her capabilities. The silence stretched across the range like a held breath as Private Voss settled deeper into her shooting position. Her left eye closed while her right aligned with the scope, searching through magnified optics for a target that existed more as faith than visible reality. The Barrett stock pressed against her shoulder with familiar weight, though her personnel file indicated minimal experience with precision rifles. "This is painful to watch," muttered Gunnery Sergeant Pike to his neighboring observer. "The girl's about to embarrass herself in front of half the base command structure." His weathered face carried the skeptical expression of someone who had witnessed countless failures at lesser distances. Colonel Hayes consulted his range book, flipping through pages of documented attempts at the 1,700-meter challenge. In 4 years of conducting this test, only 2 shooters had achieved center mass hits. Both were legendary figures whose reputations preceded them into rooms full of hardened combat veterans. Master Sergeant Blackwater held the current record with a shot that had silenced an entire sniper school graduation ceremony. Chief Petty Officer Kane had duplicated the feat during a joint training exercise that became the stuff of military folklore. "She's taking too long with target acquisition," observed Captain Rodriguez, whose own sniper credentials included 3 confirmed kills beyond 1,500 meters. At this distance, atmospheric conditions change by the minute. The longer she waits, the more variables shift against her favor. General Blackwood checked his watch again, noting the elapsed time since Private Voss had assumed her firing position. Experienced marksmen typically located their targets within 90 seconds at extreme distances. She had been searching for nearly 3 minutes, suggesting unfamiliarity with long-range optics that confirmed his initial assessment of her capabilities. The wind gauge mounted beside the firing line showed gusts increasing to 15 knots with directional shifts every 20 seconds. Humidity levels had risen 3% since the previous shooter's attempt, introducing additional atmospheric density that would affect bullet trajectory in subtle but crucial ways. "Found it," Private Voss announced quietly, her voice carrying just enough volume to reach the observation deck 20 feet above her position. The simple statement drew exchanged glances among the assembled personnel, most of whom had expected her to struggle with target identification indefinitely. Master Chief Hendricks leaned forward against the railing, his experienced eyes noting the steadiness of her breathing pattern and the relaxed grip she maintained on the rifle. Something in her posture suggested confidence that contradicted the general consensus regarding her probable performance. "Now comes the hard part," commented Major Stevens, whose own attempts at this distance had resulted in respectable but unsuccessful shots. Seeing the target and hitting the target are entirely different challenges when you're dealing with 1,700 meters of intervening space. The spotting scope beside General Blackwood provided a magnified view of the distant target, a black silhouette barely visible against the brown hillside backdrop. At this distance, the target appeared roughly the size of a postage stamp held at arm's length, a seemingly impossible objective for precise bullet placement. "She's not accounting for wind properly," predicted Sergeant First Class Morrison, watching Private Voss make minute adjustments to her scope settings. "The crosswind component alone requires at least 4 minutes of angle correction, and she's barely moved her windage knob." 43 military personnel maintained various positions around the firing line and observation areas, creating an audience that transformed a simple marksmanship test into a spectacle of anticipated failure. Conversations had shifted from casual banter to focused observation as curiosity overcame initial dismissiveness. The Barrett's muzzle remained steady despite the weapon's substantial weight and the challenging shooting position required for extreme distance work. Private Voss controlled her breathing in measured cycles, each exhalation bringing her closer to the moment when physics and skill would determine success or failure. General Blackwood found himself genuinely curious about her technique, despite his certainty regarding the outcome. Her approach differed subtly from textbook methods taught in sniper schools, incorporating minor variations that suggested either poor training or alternative instruction sources. Wind conditions stabilized temporarily, creating a brief window of opportunity that experienced marksmen recognized immediately. Several observers noted the momentary calm, understanding that such windows rarely lasted more than 30 seconds at extreme distances. Private Voss adjusted her cheek weld against the Barrett stock, fine-tuning her sight picture with movements so minimal they appeared almost imperceptible to the watching crowd. Her breathing had settled into the rhythmic pattern that separated competent shooters from amateurs, though her youthful appearance continued to fuel skepticism among the assembled veterans. "She's going to pull the shot low," predicted Staff Sergeant Chun, whose own sniper school credentials included instructor certification. New shooters always anticipate recoil with heavy rifles like the Barrett. The flinch is inevitable at this caliber, especially under pressure with an audience watching. Colonel Hayes opened his logbook to a fresh page, preparing to document another unsuccessful attempt at the legendary distance. His records showed a pattern of failure that reinforced the exclusive nature of 1,700-meter marksmanship. Even seasoned professionals struggled with the mathematical complexity of ballistic calculations required at such ranges. The morning sun climbed higher, creating heat shimmer that danced across the distant hillside like invisible spirits. Master Chief Hendricks recognized the atmospheric disturbance as another variable working against successful shot placement. Heat mirage could create optical illusions that shifted apparent target locations by several inches. "Watch her trigger control," advised Gunnery Sergeant Pike to the junior personnel gathered around him. Most recruits jerk the trigger instead of applying steady rearward pressure. At 1,700 meters, even microscopic movement during trigger break translates to significant point of impact variations. General Blackwood studied Private Voss through binoculars, noting details that contradicted his initial assessment. Her grip maintained consistent pressure without the white-knuckle tension typical of nervous shooters. Her left elbow positioned itself naturally for bone support rather than muscle strain. Small technical details suggested familiarity with precision shooting that her personnel file failed to document. The wind gauge showed another directional shift, this time backing toward the southeast at 11 knots with gusts reaching 16. Captain Rodriguez shook his head knowingly, recognizing conditions that would challenge even experienced long-range specialists. Variable wind created the most difficult shooting scenarios, requiring constant recalculation of holdover and windage corrections. "She needs to hurry up," commented Lieutenant Barnes, checking his own watch. Atmospheric conditions deteriorate rapidly after 900 hours. Temperature differential between ground level and target elevation will start affecting bullet trajectory within the next 10 minutes. 43 pairs of eyes remained fixed on the slight figure behind the massive rifle, waiting for the inevitable conclusion to this exercise in futility. Betting pools had formed spontaneously among the observers, with odds heavily favoring spectacular failure over miraculous success. The spotting scope revealed minute details of the distant target, its black silhouette wavering slightly in the heat distortion. At 1,700 meters, environmental factors multiplied exponentially, transforming straightforward marksmanship into complex physics problems that required both theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Private Voss made a subtle adjustment to her scope's elevation turret, clicking the mechanism twice in the direction that suggested familiarity with long-range ballistic compensation. Master Sergeant Reynolds observed her technique with growing interest, recognizing movements that indicated systematic approach rather than random guessing. Her breathing pattern synchronized with a natural respiratory pause that precision shooters learned to exploit. The brief moment between exhalation and inhalation provided maximum stability for trigger manipulation, though maintaining that timing while calculating complex ballistic solutions challenged even experienced marksmen. The Barrett's heavy barrel remained motionless despite the substantial weight that typically caused fatigue-induced tremor in untrained shooters. Private Voss demonstrated surprising strength and endurance for someone whose physical appearance suggested limited exposure to heavy weapon systems. General Blackwood found himself questioning assumptions about her background, though her official records indicated standard basic training without specialized schools or advanced marksmanship programs. Perhaps natural talent occasionally surfaced among unlikely candidates, though 1,700-meter shots required more than innate ability to achieve success. Wind conditions showed brief stabilization as thermal currents reached equilibrium with rising temperatures. The momentary calm created optimal shooting conditions that rarely lasted more than 20 seconds at extreme distances, presenting a narrow window of opportunity for anyone prepared to exploit it. The silence deepened as Private Voss entered what experienced marksmen recognized as the final phase of shot preparation. Her finger moved to the trigger with deliberate precision, applying the preliminary pressure that took up slack without disturbing sight alignment. Every observer understood that the next few seconds would determine success or failure at the legendary distance. "She's rushing the shot," whispered Sergeant Torres to his companion. You can see the tension building in her shoulders. Pressure situations always expose inexperience, especially with weapons this powerful. Colonel Hayes positioned himself behind the high-powered spotting scope, adjusting the magnification to maximum clarity for documenting the impact location. His documentation would serve as evidence of another failed attempt, reinforcing the exclusive nature of 1,700-meter marksmanship achievements. The Barrett M82 represented nearly 30 pounds of precision engineering, designed for anti-material missions rather than traditional sniper applications. Its massive .50 caliber projectile carried devastating energy across extreme distances, though harnessing that power required expertise that came only through extensive specialized training. "Watch for muzzle jump," advised Master Chief Hendricks to the junior personnel surrounding him. The Barrett produces significant recoil that can throw inexperienced shooters completely off target. Recovery time for follow-up shots typically exceeds 8 seconds with untrained operators. General Blackwood noticed Private Voss make one final windage adjustment, turning the scope turret counterclockwise to compensate for the southeast crosswind. Her calculation appeared systematic rather than guesswork, suggesting understanding of ballistic principles that contradicted her supposed inexperience. The atmospheric conditions continued deteriorating as thermal currents increased with rising temperatures. Heat shimmer now created visible distortion across the entire 1,700-meter flight path, transforming target identification into a challenging exercise even for experienced spotters. "She needs to take the shot now," observed Captain Rodriguez, noting the environmental changes. "Waiting longer will only compound the difficulty. These conditions are already beyond what most shooters can successfully navigate." 43 military personnel maintained absolute silence, recognizing the critical moment when technique and preparation would face ultimate testing. The betting odds had shifted slightly as observers noted details that suggested more competence than initially apparent, though failure remained the overwhelming expectation. Private Voss controlled her breathing in a measured cadence that preceded precision shooting, each cycle bringing her closer to the respiratory pause that provided maximum stability. Her right eye remained fixed on the scope reticle, while her left eye stayed closed to eliminate visual confusion. The wind gauge registered another shift, backing further toward the east at 13 knots with occasional gusts reaching 18. Variable conditions created the most challenging scenarios for long-range shooting, requiring constant recalculation of environmental factors that affected bullet trajectory. Master Sergeant Reynolds studied her technique through binoculars, recognizing subtle indicators that separated trained marksmen from casual shooters. Her elbow placement maximized bone support while minimizing muscle tension. Her grip maintained consistent pressure without the death grip typical of nervous shooters. The spotting scope revealed the distant target through waves of heat distortion that made precise aiming nearly impossible. At 1,700 meters, atmospheric interference could shift apparent target locations by several inches, creating optical illusions that defeated even experienced long-range specialists. General Blackwood found himself genuinely curious about the outcome, despite his certainty regarding probable failure. Something in Private Voss's approach suggested preparation that extended beyond basic military training. Though her personnel file contained no references to advanced marksmanship programs or specialized schools. The Barrett's heavy barrel remained steady despite the challenging shooting position and substantial weapon weight. Private Voss demonstrated surprising physical control for someone whose slight frame appeared inadequate for managing such powerful firearms effectively. Her trigger finger began applying the final pressure that would release the firing pin, sending a massive projectile across 1,700 meters of intervening space toward a target that existed more as mathematical calculation than visible objective. Success required perfect integration of technique, calculation, and atmospheric assessment. The moment stretched endlessly as 43 observers waited for the inevitable conclusion to this exercise in ambitious futility, unaware that their assumptions about legendary marksmanship were about to face dramatic recalibration. The Barrett erupted with thunderous percussion that rolled across the range like an earthquake, its massive muzzle brake directing blast waves that shook nearby equipment and caused several observers to instinctively step backward. The .50 caliber projectile departed the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second, beginning its journey across 1,700 meters of challenging atmospheric conditions. Complete miss, predicted Staff Sergeant Chun immediately, his voice cutting through the lingering echo of the gunshot. At that distance with these wind conditions, even experienced snipers struggle to find a target. New shooters typically miss by yards rather than inches. Colonel Hayes tracked the bullet's flight path through his spotting scope, following the barely visible trace as it arced toward the distant hillside. The projectile's trajectory appeared correct for the first 1,000 meters, though atmospheric variables could still push it significantly off course during the remaining flight time. Private Voss remained motionless behind the Barrett, maintaining her shooting position while the massive rifle settled from its violent recoil cycle. Her breathing pattern stayed controlled despite the weapon's punishing kick, suggesting familiarity with heavy-caliber firearms that contradicted her personnel file. The flight time for 1,700 meters stretched toward 3 seconds, an eternity during which physics and environmental factors would determine success or failure. Wind shear at different altitudes could deflect the projectile laterally, while temperature variations affected air density and ballistic performance. "Watch the target area," advised Master Chief Hendricks, his binoculars focused on the distant hillside where impact should occur. At this distance, you'll see the dust cloud before hearing the secondary impact sound. Missed distance will be immediately apparent. General Blackwood held his breath unconsciously, caught between expectation of failure and growing curiosity about Private Voss's unexpected competence. Her post-shot behavior differed from typical recruit patterns, showing confidence rather than anxiety about results. The spotting scope magnification revealed every detail of the target zone, where brown earth and scattered vegetation waited to absorb another failed attempt at legendary marksmanship. Previous impacts had scarred the hillside around the target, creating a pattern of near misses that documented the challenge's difficulty. She pulled it left, called out Gunnery Sergeant Pike, though his prediction preceded actual impact confirmation. The crosswind component always catches inexperienced shooters. Even with perfect elevation calculation, windage errors cause most failures at extreme distances. 43 pairs of eyes remained fixed on the distant hillside, waiting for the telltale dust cloud that would mark impact location and confirm another unsuccessful attempt. The silence stretched as flight time approached maximum duration for the calculated distance. Captain Rodriguez checked his stopwatch, noting elapsed time since muzzle flash. Ballistic calculations indicated impact should occur within the next half-second, revealing whether months of preparation had produced competence or confirmed initial skepticism about recruit capabilities. The atmospheric conditions continued working against projectile stability as thermal currents and wind shear affected the bullet's path through three-dimensional space. At 1,700 meters, even minor environmental factors could transform perfect shots into embarrassing misses. Master Sergeant Reynolds maintained focus on the target area through powerful binoculars, expecting to witness another confirmation of the exclusive nature of legendary distance shooting. His own attempts at this range had taught him respect for the mathematical precision required at such extremes. Private Voss finally lifted her head from the scope, her expression revealing nothing about confidence or concern regarding shot placement. Her demeanor suggested either remarkable composure or complete inexperience with the significance of what she had attempted. The target remained visible through heat shimmer and atmosphere distortion, a black silhouette against brown earth that had defeated numerous experienced marksmen. Success at 1,700 meters separated competent shooters from legendary figures whose reputations transcended normal military recognition. General Blackwood found himself leaning forward against the observation deck railing, genuinely curious about the outcome despite his certainty regarding probable failure. Something in Private Voss's technique had challenged his assumptions about her background and training. Flight time approached maximum duration as the projectile covered final meters toward impact. Physics and environmental factors had completed their influence on trajectory, leaving only the revelation of success or failure to conclude this ambitious attempt at impossible marksmanship. The silence deepened as 43 observers waited for confirmation of their collective expectations, unaware that their understanding of legendary shooting was about to undergo fundamental recalibration through undeniable demonstration of extraordinary capability. The distant target exploded in a shower of debris and dust as the massive .50 caliber projectile struck dead center, sending fragments of steel and earth cascading down the hillside in a display that left 43 observers frozen in stunned silence. The impact occurred exactly where legends were supposed to hit, in the precise center of the black silhouette that had defeated countless experienced marksmen. "Impossible," whispered Staff Sergeant Shun, his binoculars trembling slightly as he stared at the destruction on the distant hillside. His voice cracked with disbelief as the reality of what he had witnessed challenged everything he understood about marksmanship at legendary distances. Colonel Hayes dropped his logbook, the pages scattering across the observation deck as his hands lost their grip on equipment he had used to document failures for 4 consecutive years. His spotting scope confirmed what his mind struggled to accept: a perfect center-mass hit at 1,700 meters by a recruit whose personnel file suggested minimal shooting experience. The silence stretched endlessly as trained military professionals attempted to process an achievement that belonged in the realm of mythology rather than basic training exercises. Master Chief Hendricks slowly lowered his binoculars, his weathered face displaying an expression of complete bewilderment that 40 years of military service had never produced. "How did she—" began Gunnery Sergeant Pike, his sentence trailing into nothing as he struggled to formulate words adequate for describing the impossible. His extensive sniper school experience provided no framework for understanding what had just occurred on the range before him. General Blackwood gripped the observation deck railing with white knuckles, his knuckles standing out against sun-darkened skin as he leaned forward in desperate attempt to confirm what his eyes reported. The spotting scope magnification revealed devastating accuracy that challenged his fundamental understanding of marksmanship development and training progression. Private Voss calmly began clearing the barracks chamber, ejecting the spent casing with movements that suggested routine familiarity rather than surprise at her achievement. Her composed demeanor contrasted sharply with the shocked expressions surrounding her as 43 military professionals struggled to comprehend legendary shooting. The target area continued smoking slightly from the massive projectile's impact, debris still settling around the completely destroyed center section that had absorbed kinetic energy equivalent to a small artillery round. At 1,700 meters, such precision required mathematical perfection combined with atmospheric assessment capabilities that few marksmen ever developed. "She actually hit it," muttered Captain Rodriguez, his voice barely audible as he stated the obvious truth that everyone could see but nobody could fully accept. Center mass at 1,700 meters with variable wind conditions that had defeated master sergeants and distinguished marksmen throughout the morning. Master Sergeant Reynolds checked his own binoculars repeatedly, adjusting focus and magnification in desperate search for evidence that his eyes were deceiving him. The destroyed target remained stubbornly real, its center section obliterated by accuracy that belonged to legendary figures rather than unknown recruits. 43 pairs of eyes shifted between the distant impact site and Private Voss, who continued her post-shot procedures with mechanical precision that suggested extensive training despite official records indicating otherwise. Her movements carried the confidence of someone accustomed to achieving impossible results. The atmospheric conditions that had been cited as insurmountable obstacles now seemed irrelevant in the face of demonstrated competence that transcended environmental challenges. Heat shimmer, variable winds, and atmospheric pressure variations had been overcome through technique that defied explanation. General Blackwood found his assumptions about military training and natural talent undergoing fundamental reconstruction as he witnessed proof that legendary marksmanship could emerge from unexpected sources. His career had taught him to recognize exceptional ability, though this display exceeded all previous examples. Someone broke the silence with a nervous laugh that died immediately as the magnitude of the achievement settled over the assembled group. Legendary distance shooting had just been demonstrated by someone whose background suggested it should have been impossible, challenging everything they believed about marksmanship development. The betting pools that had favored spectacular failure now faced the reality of spectacular success, leaving observers to recalculate their understanding of what constituted possible versus impossible in precision shooting. Private Voss had just redefined the boundaries of achievement at 1,700 meters. Colonel Hayes retrieved his scattered logbook pages with trembling hands, preparing to document the first successful attempt he had witnessed in 4 years of conducting this test. His records would now include an entry that challenged the exclusive nature of legendary marksmanship. Private Voss secured the Barrett's safety and began disassembling the rifle with fluid movements that spoke of countless repetitions, her hands moving across components with the unconscious familiarity of someone who had performed these actions under stress and in darkness. Each motion carried precision that matched her shooting, revealing competence that extended far beyond a single lucky shot. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" demanded General Blackwood, his voice cutting through the stunned silence as he descended from the observation deck with hurried steps. His weathered face displayed a mixture of amazement and suspicion as he approached the firing line where legendary marksmanship had just been demonstrated by an impossible candidate. Private Voss looked up from her weapon maintenance, meeting the general's intense stare with calm eyes that held depths of experience contradicting her youthful appearance. "My father taught me, sir," she replied simply, her voice carrying quiet confidence that suggested this level of achievement felt normal rather than extraordinary. The assembled crowd of military professionals remained frozen in various positions around the range, their expressions ranging from shocked disbelief to growing curiosity about the recruit who had just redefined their understanding of possible marksmanship achievements. Conversations began in whispers as minds struggled to process what they had witnessed. "Your father," repeated Colonel Hayes, his voice heavy with skepticism as he examined Private Voss's personnel file again, searching for clues that might explain legendary shooting capability. "There's no mention of specialized training or family military background in your records. Who exactly was your father?" Master Chief Hendricks approached the firing line with the measured steps of someone reassessing everything he thought he knew about marksmanship development. His 40 years of military service had taught him to recognize exceptional talent, though this display exceeded all previous encounters with natural ability. The destroyed target remained visible on the distant hillside, its center section obliterated by precision that belonged in classified after-action reports rather than basic training exercises. Debris continued settling around the impact site, providing undeniable proof of accuracy that challenged conventional understanding. "She's not telling us something," observed Staff Sergeant Shun, his voice carrying suspicion as he studied Private Voss's composed demeanor. "Nobody shoots like that without extensive, specialized training. The muscle memory alone requires thousands of rounds through precision rifles." Private Voss continued her weapon maintenance routine, cleaning components with practiced efficiency while 43 pairs of eyes scrutinized her every movement. Her technique revealed familiarity with the Barrett system that suggested far more experience than her age and supposed background should have allowed. Captain Rodriguez pulled out his field notebook, beginning to document details about technique and procedure that might explain the impossible shot. His sniper instructor background provided framework for analyzing marksmanship, though this achievement transcended normal teaching progressions. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharper shadows across the range as thermal conditions continued deteriorating for long-distance shooting. The fact that Private Voss had achieved legendary accuracy under challenging environmental conditions only added to the mystery surrounding her capabilities. General Blackwood studied her face, searching for tells that might reveal deception or hidden backgrounds that could explain 1,700-meter marksmanship. His career had taught him to read people, though Private Voss maintained composure that suggested either remarkable honesty or exceptional training in operational security. "Your shooting position was textbook perfect," commented Master Sergeant Reynolds, his voice carrying professional respect that hadn't been present during the pre-shot skepticism. "The way you compensated for wind and atmospheric conditions showed understanding that takes years to develop. Where did you really learn those skills?" Private Voss finished reassembling the Barrett with movements that flowed like practice choreography, each component falling into place without conscious thought or visual confirmation. Her familiarity with the weapon system suggested hundreds of hours of training rather than basic military exposure. 43 military professionals found themselves recalibrating their assumptions about talent development and training recognition as they witnessed competence that defied explanation through conventional military progression. The recruit before them possessed capabilities that belonged to elite units rather than basic programs. The range fell quiet except for equipment sounds and distant atmospheric noise as everyone processed the transformation of their understanding about what constituted possible versus impossible in precision marksmanship. Private Voss had just demonstrated that legends could emerge from unexpected sources, challenging everything they believed about military excellence. General Blackwood circled Private Voss like a predator studying unexpected prey, his boots crunching on spent brass casings that littered the firing line from previous failed attempts. His weathered face carried the expression of someone whose fundamental assumptions about military training had just been shattered by undeniable demonstration of impossible capability. "I've been conducting this test for 4 years," he stated, his voice carrying authority earned through 3 decades of military service. Master sergeants with 20 years of sniper experience have failed at this distance. Distinguished marksmen from every branch of service have missed these targets by feet rather than inches. Yet you, a recruit with minimal documented training, achieved perfect center mass on your first attempt. Private Voss completed her equipment checklist with methodical precision, securing each component in its designated position while maintaining the composed demeanor that had characterized her entire performance. Her movements suggested routine familiarity with post-shooting procedures that contradicted her supposed inexperience with precision rifles. "Something doesn't add up here," muttered Colonel Hayes, flipping through personnel files that provided no explanation for legendary marksmanship capabilities. Her background check shows standard civilian education with no military family connections. No shooting clubs, no competitive marksmanship, no specialized training programs of any kind. The assembled crowd of military professionals maintained their positions around the firing line, reluctant to leave without understanding how their collective assessment of possible achievement had been so dramatically wrong. Whispered conversations speculated about hidden backgrounds and classified training programs that might explain the impossible. Master Chief Hendricks approached with the measured steps of someone reassessing 40 years of experience with military training progression. His sharp eyes noted details about Private Voss's equipment handling that suggested familiarity extending far beyond basic military instruction, though her age made extensive training seem chronologically impossible. The Barrett M82 rested in its case like a sleeping giant, its massive bulk testament to the power required for 1,700-meter precision. The fact that Private Voss had controlled such devastating force with surgical accuracy only deepened the mystery surrounding her true capabilities and background. "Your father taught you," you said, General Blackwood continued, his voice carrying skeptical undertones as he studied her face for tells that might reveal deception. "What was your father's name? What branch of service? What units? I want to understand how civilian instruction produced military-grade marksmanship that exceeds most professional standards." Private Voss met his intense stare without flinching, her calm expression revealing nothing about the thoughts behind eyes that held depths of experience, contradicting her youthful appearance. He preferred not to discuss his military service, sir, she replied quietly, her words carrying finality that discouraged further inquiry. Staff Sergeant Chun exchanged meaningful glances with his companions, recognizing evasive answers that suggested classified backgrounds or operational security concerns. His own special operations experience had taught him to identify individuals whose true capabilities remained hidden beneath carefully constructed public personas. The destroyed target remained visible on the distant hillside, its obliterated center section providing undeniable proof that legendary shooting had occurred despite all logical expectations to the contrary. Debris from the massive impact continued settling around the impact site, marking the location where impossible had become reality. Captain Rodriguez continued documenting technical details about shooting technique and environmental conditions, building a comprehensive record of the achievement that would challenge conventional understanding of marksmanship development. His notes would provide evidence that natural talent could transcend normal training limitations. 43 military professionals found themselves witnesses to an event that would reshape their understanding of what constituted possible versus impossible in precision shooting. The recruit before them had demonstrated capabilities that belonged in classified mission reports rather than basic training documentation. General Blackwood's frustration grew as he encountered resistance to inquiries that should have produced straightforward answers about training background and skill development. His authority commanded respect throughout multiple commands, yet Private Voss maintained composure that suggested comfort with high-level attention. The morning sun reached full intensity, creating heat shimmer that would have made the 1,700-meter shot even more challenging had it been attempted now rather than during the brief window of optimal conditions that Private Voss had somehow recognized and exploited with professional timing. The tension on the firing line thickened as General Blackwood's patience eroded under the weight of unanswered questions about impossible marksmanship demonstrated by someone whose background defied logical explanation. His 30 years of military service had taught him to recognize evasion, and Private Voss's carefully neutral responses triggered every instinct honed through decades of command responsibility. "I'm ordering you to provide complete information about your training background," he stated, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded respect across multiple theaters of operation. This level of marksmanship capability doesn't develop in isolation. Someone taught you these skills, and I intend to identify that source. Private Voss straightened to attention with movements that displayed military bearing beyond her supposed experience level, her posture suggesting familiarity with command presence that contradicted her recruit status. "Sir, my father's service record remains classified at levels beyond my clearance to discuss," she replied, her words carrying implications that stunned the assembled observers. "Classified," repeated Colonel Hayes, his voice rising with incredulous emphasis as the implications registered throughout the gathered crowd of military professionals. "Are you suggesting your father held clearances that restrict discussion of his service record? What classification level are we discussing here?" The assembled personnel exchanged significant glances as they processed the revelation that Private Voss might possess connections to classified military operations that would explain her extraordinary capabilities. Whispered speculation began immediately as 43 experienced professionals recalibrated their assumptions about her background. Master Chief Hendricks stepped forward with the deliberate movements of someone whose curiosity had transformed into professional concern. His 4 decades of military service had exposed him to numerous classified programs, though few operated at levels that restricted family discussion of basic service information. The Barrett case closed with mechanical precision as Private Voss completed her equipment securing procedures, her movements maintaining the calm efficiency that had characterized her entire performance despite growing pressure from increasingly frustrated authority figures demanding explanations she claimed inability to provide. "What classification level?" demanded General Blackwood, his voice carrying dangerous undertones as he confronted the possibility that a recruit possessed knowledge about classified programs that exceeded his own clearance access. His position commanded authority over significant operations, yet Private Voss suggested limitations to his information access. "Above your clearance level, sir," Private Voss replied quietly, her words striking the assembled crowd like physical blows as they implied classification levels that few military personnel ever encountered during entire careers. Her composed delivery suggested familiarity with such discussions rather than nervous bluffing. Staff Sergeant Shun felt his worldview shifting as he processed implications of classification levels that transcended normal military hierarchy structures. His special operations background had exposed him to sensitive programs, though Private Voss suggested involvement with operations beyond conventional special forces access. The destroyed target on the distant hillside took on new significance as evidence of capabilities that might stem from training programs so classified that their existence remained hidden from senior military leadership. 1,700-meter precision suddenly seemed less impossible when viewed through the lens of black operations training. Captain Rodriguez stopped taking notes as he realized the documentation might involve information that exceeded his clearance level to record. His sniper instructor background had taught him to recognize capabilities that belonged to specialized units, though Private Voss implied training sources beyond known programs. 43 military professionals found themselves confronting the possibility that their witness to legendary marksmanship had revealed connections to operations that existed beyond normal military awareness. The recruit before them might represent capabilities that challenged their understanding of military structure itself. General Blackwood's frustration transformed into calculation as he weighed the implications of classification levels that might restrict his access to information about personnel under his command. His authority seemed suddenly inadequate when confronted with systems that operated beyond conventional military hierarchy. The morning sun climbed toward its zenith, creating atmospheric conditions that would have made the 1,700-meter shot nearly impossible for anyone lacking the training that Private Voss claimed originated from sources too classified for discussion with senior military leadership, whose clearances suddenly seemed insufficient. General Blackwood's secure satellite phone vibrated against his chest with a distinctive pattern reserved for priority communications from Pentagon-level authority. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he recognized the encryption signature that indicated involvement of classification levels that exceeded his command authority, transforming Private Voss from curious anomaly into potential national security concern. "Stand down, General," came the voice through encrypted channels, carrying authority that brooked no argument or delay. Private Voss is under direct oversight from compartmentalized programs that operate beyond your clearance access. Cease all inquiries regarding her background or training sources immediately. The 43 assembled military professionals watched General Blackwood's expression transform from frustrated authority to stunned compliance as he processed orders that effectively removed his command authority over personnel within his own installation. His 30 years of service had never encountered directives that superseded his operational control so completely. "Sir," Colonel Hayes began, approaching his superior with confusion evident in his voice as he witnessed the unprecedented situation of a 3-star general receiving orders regarding a basic recruit. "What classification level are we dealing with here? What programs operate at clearances that restrict command authority?" Private Voss maintained her composed stance while equipment securing procedures continued with mechanical precision, her demeanor suggesting familiarity with situations where senior military leadership discovered limitations to their authority and information access. Her calm acceptance of the developing crisis contrasted sharply with the growing bewilderment surrounding her. The Pentagon contact continued through encrypted communications, providing General Blackwood with minimal information about oversight programs that operated beyond conventional military structure. Private Voss represents capabilities developed through training programs that remain compartmentalized for national security reasons, the voice explained tersely. Master Chief Hendricks felt his understanding of military hierarchy crumbling as he witnessed a recruit whose background commanded respect from authority levels that exceeded base command structure. His 4 decades of service had exposed him to classified programs, though none that operated with such complete autonomy from normal military oversight. The Barrett case rested at Private Voss's feet like evidence of capabilities that transcended normal military training progression. Its massive bulk testament to precision that now carried implications extending far beyond exceptional marksmanship into realms of national security operations that few personnel ever encountered. How many programs operate at these classification levels? Demanded General Blackwood, his voice carrying desperate authority as he struggled to maintain command relevance in situations that exceeded his clearance access. His position had commanded respect across multiple theaters, yet Private Voss represented systems that operated beyond his awareness. That information exceeds your clearance level, General, replied the Pentagon contact with finality that closed discussion about operational details that remained hidden from senior military leadership. Private Voss will continue her training assignment under observation protocols that require no action from base personnel. Staff Sergeant Chun exchanged meaningful glances with his companions as they processed the reality that their witness to legendary marksmanship had revealed connections to programs so classified that 3-star generals lacked authority to investigate personnel backgrounds or training sources. The assembled crowd of military professionals found themselves confronting evidence that their understanding of military structure represented only surface layers of systems that operated with complete autonomy from conventional command hierarchy. Private Voss embodied capabilities that challenged their comprehension of possible versus impossible in military training. Captain Rodriguez closed his documentation notebook as he realized his records might involve information that exceeded multiple clearance levels to document safely. The technical details of 1,700-meter precision suddenly carried implications that extended far beyond marksmanship instruction into realms of national security. 43 witnesses to impossible achievement discovered that their experience had revealed systems that operated beyond their awareness or comprehension, transforming a simple marksmanship test into exposure to classification levels that few military personnel ever encountered during entire careers devoted to service and sacrifice. The distant thrum of rotorcraft echoed across the range as 2 unmarked helicopters approached from the north, their black silhouettes cutting through morning air with the purposeful precision of aircraft operating under priority clearances that superseded normal base authority. General Blackwood recognized the signature of Special Operations Aviation assets that operated beyond conventional military oversight. Private Voss looked up from her equipment with the first expression of genuine emotion she had displayed throughout the entire demonstration, her composed facade cracking slightly as she recognized aircraft that carried personal significance extending beyond professional military operations. Her slight smile suggested anticipation rather than concern about the approaching extraction team. "What the hell is happening here?" muttered Colonel Hayes as he watched the helicopters establish landing approaches without requesting clearance from base air traffic control. His 25 years of military aviation experience had never encountered aircraft that operated with such complete autonomy from standard safety protocols and command authority. The lead helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and debris that scattered across the firing line, its rotors maintaining power while personnel in unmarked combat gear emerged with movements that displayed specialized training beyond conventional military units. Their equipment carried modifications that suggested capabilities extending far beyond standard special operations parameters. Master Chief Hendricks stepped backward instinctively as armed personnel approached with professional efficiency that commanded immediate respect from 43 seasoned military observers. His 4 decades of service had exposed him to elite units, though these operators displayed competence that transcended normal special forces training and equipment standards. Private Voss shouldered her equipment case with practiced ease, preparing for departure with personnel whose arrival she had clearly anticipated despite providing no advance warning to base command structure. Her movements suggested familiarity with extraction procedures that operated beyond normal military coordination protocols. The extraction team leader approached General Blackwood with deliberate steps that conveyed respect for his rank, while maintaining operational authority that superseded his command oversight. "Sir, Private Voss has completed her evaluation assignment and will be returning to her primary training program," he stated with professional courtesy that masked absolute certainty about operational priorities. "Assignment," repeated General Blackwood, his voice heavy with implications as he processed the revelation that Private Voss's presence represented systematic evaluation rather than random recruit placement. The legendary marksmanship demonstration suddenly acquired new significance as evidence of capabilities being tested rather than discovered. Staff Sergeant Chun felt his worldview completing its transformation as he realized their witness to impossible achievement had been orchestrated by programs that operated with resources and authority that challenged his understanding of military structure itself. Private Voss represented systems that exceeded his comprehension of possible training and operational development. The second helicopter maintained its hovering position while providing overwatch with equipment that displayed technological capabilities beyond standard military aviation assets. Its presence suggested security protocols that treated the extraction as potentially hostile operation rather than routine personnel transfer. Captain Rodriguez watched his documentation become irrelevant as he understood that his records involved operational details that exceeded multiple classification levels to preserve safely. The technical aspects of 1,700-meter precision suddenly carried implications that extended far beyond marksmanship instruction into realms of national security operations. 43 military professionals found themselves witnesses to systems that operated beyond their awareness or authority, transforming their understanding of military capability development from conventional training progression into exposure to programs that challenged their comprehension of possible versus impossible in human performance enhancement. Private Voss paused at the helicopter's entry point, turning to address General Blackwood with the first acknowledgement of his authority she had displayed throughout the entire encounter. "Thank you for providing evaluation opportunities, sir," she stated formally, her words carrying implications that their entire interaction had served purposes beyond his awareness or control. The Barrett case disappeared into the helicopter's cargo compartment along with equipment that suggested capabilities extending far beyond conventional military weapons systems, leaving behind only memories of precision that had redefined the boundaries of legendary marksmanship for everyone who had witnessed the impossible demonstration. The helicopters lifted off in synchronized precision, their black silhouettes disappearing into the morning sky with Private Voss and the mystery of her impossible marksmanship, leaving behind 43 stunned military professionals whose understanding of legendary shooting had been forever transformed by undeniable demonstration of capabilities that transcended normal human limits. General Blackwood stood motionless as rotor wash settled around his boots, his weathered face displaying the expression of someone whose fundamental assumptions about military training and national security had undergone complete reconstruction through exposure to programs that operated beyond his comprehension or authority. "She actually did it," whispered Staff Sergeant Chun, his voice carrying awe that replaced the skepticism that had characterized his pre-shot predictions. center mass at 1,700 meters on her first attempt, with wind conditions that defeated master sergeants and distinguished marksmen throughout the morning. The destroyed target remained visible on the distant hillside, its obliterated center section providing permanent evidence that legendary marksmanship had been demonstrated by someone whose true identity and training background would remain forever classified above the clearance levels of everyone who had witnessed the achievement. Colonel Hayes retrieved his scattered logbook pages with trembling hands, preparing to document the first successful attempt he had recorded in 4 years of conducting the legendary distance test. His entry would challenge the exclusive nature of 1,700-meter shooting while raising questions about capabilities that existed beyond conventional military awareness. Master Chief Hendricks approached the firing line where Private Voss had achieved the impossible, studying brass casings and equipment impressions that provided the only remaining physical evidence of precision that belonged in classified mission reports rather than basic training documentation. The morning sun reached full intensity, creating heat shimmer that made the destroyed target waver like a mirage, though its reality remained undeniable proof that legends could emerge from sources that operated beyond normal military structure and training progression. 43 witnesses to extraordinary achievement found themselves bound by shared experience that would reshape their understanding of possible versus impossible in human performance, though classification restrictions would prevent them from discussing details with personnel lacking appropriate clearances. The range fell silent except for equipment sounds and atmospheric noise as everyone processed the transformation of their comprehension about what constituted legendary marksmanship and the programs that developed such capabilities in personnel whose backgrounds remained hidden from conventional military oversight. General Blackwood finally spoke, his voice carrying respect that had been absent during his initial assessment of Private Voss's capabilities. Gentlemen, you have just witnessed marksmanship that belongs in the realm of legend, demonstrated by someone whose training exceeds anything we understand about conventional military development. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment or character, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when others doubted their capabilities. Captain Rodriguez closed his documentation materials permanently, understanding that his technical records involved operational details that exceeded multiple classification levels to preserve safely. The precision shooting he had witnessed would remain undocumented except in memories that carried implications extending far beyond marksmanship instruction. Staff Sergeant Chun exchanged final glances with his companions as they prepared to leave the range where their assumptions about military training had been shattered by demonstration of capabilities that challenged their understanding of human potential when developed through programs that operated beyond their awareness. The firing line equipment remained exactly as Private Voss had left it, positioned with precision that matched her shooting and suggested attention to detail that characterized every aspect of her performance throughout the legendary distance demonstration that would be remembered by 43 witnesses for the remainder of their military careers. Master Sergeant N.T. Reynolds gathered his spotting equipment with movements that carried new respect for marksmanship achievements that transcended normal training progression. His own distinguished shooting credentials diminished by exposure to precision that belonged in realms of national security operations rather than conventional military instruction programs that prepared soldiers for known challenges rather than impossible ones.